the same way. All right, folks, so a recent newspaper study reveals that predators on social media are targeting teens more than younger children. Joining us this morning for our discussion is the Chief Executive Officer of Tea House Therapy and clinical psychologist, Mrs. Sonia Winter. Good morning, ma'am. Welcome to Smile. How are you?
Delia, good morning, Neville.
Delia, don't rough you up already. Say you have a run coming. Boy. You know, I was watching the interview with the police lady. I don't want to call the wrong title here. And it was interesting when she said, the predators are pastors, parents, caregivers. I mean, everybody. That surprise you?
Well, yes and no, because grooming is about trust. You know, the predators use trust in order to get close to the individuals, to their victims. Then quite often it's people who already have trust instilled in what they do, in their relationships and so on, that can end up abusing that trust. And so in a way, they're probably the most likely to be the ones that will abuse their position of trust.
That's scary.
Because that's what grooming is about. You know, it's cultivating a relationship of trust that we're then going to violate and abuse to manipulate the victim.
That's scary. I don't know if I said good morning to you.
Good morning.
And welcome to our show. I really tease you, say, you are here.
I want to get into, as teenagers, they're already, I'm trying to phrase it, because when you say mental wellness, Jamaica people get crazy. I'm hoping that our definition of it has broadened.
Yes.
But what are some of the mental wellness issues that teenagers are coping with that makes them vulnerable to online predators?
Okay. Well, from a developmental point of view, Delia, right, it's natural and healthy that young people, teenagers, are at the stage where they're understanding and exploring independence and their own identity. That's healthy, you know. What can be a disadvantage, though, is that at that age as well, the structures of the brain that help them to assess risk and also to control their impulses are not well and fully developed as yet. So there's a tension to explore and find yourself, find your identity, find your group, as it were. Find your sense of belonging. What are your hobbies? What are your interests? What do you stand for? That's appropriate at the teenage and adolescent stage. But unfortunately, or coincidentally, the skills to make good decisions are not yet quite developed. So that tension can make them very vulnerable to people who wish to abuse them, you know, because they're individuals who will make them, teenagers, feel a sense of belonging, make them feel valued, that sort of a thing, to which they're sort of susceptible, and then take advantage.
How much is monitoring have to do with this? And we've changed. I mean, I am not the parent my mother and father was to me. So, you know, you get a little bit more flexible, and, you know, whereas my mother and father needed to know where I was 24 hours a day. It's not the same. But how much is monitoring, or the lack of it, have to do with this?
You know what, Neville, monitoring has a place, you know, but the truth is that digital platforms are moving so quickly that as soon as there is an app or there is a program that can monitor teenagers' use of social media platform or all digital platforms, is that as soon as there's one developed to monitor, there's another program developed to counter and go around it. So there is a place for monitoring. However, I think parents would be well advised to also focus on their relationship with their children. Make sure that they have earned respect and trust from their children so that they can have conversations with their teenagers about safety on these digital platforms, you know. And you have a better chance if you're leveraging your relationship with your child. In order to make sure that you keep them safe.
Do you think that's one of the reasons why the teenagers are mostly targeted? Because I feel like the younger the child, they may feel that the parent is more involved in what they're watching.
Absolutely.
But once the teenager has
That's
a little
right.
bit more, leeway.
Absolutely. And as I said, the teenagers, as I said, they're reaching out, they're stepping out to find their identity, whereas a much younger child feels safer, closer to the parent.
Right.
But teenagers naturally are stepping out into the world and so on, and that is what makes them vulnerable. You're correct.
What would I be telling a teenager at my old age, that would want them to come to me or, meet me somewhere? What would I be telling them?
Okay, well, typically what predators do is a lot of flattery. A lot of affirmations. We call it love bombing these days, but it's telling you how wonderful you are, making them feel really affirmed and valued and make them feel good, number one. Also things such as pretending to share interests that they have. So, as I said earlier, teenagers are exploring what are they interested in, what do they find intriguing. And predators will pretend to share that interest, and that also is gives them a sense of connection. Also, what can also happen too is the isolation that the predator can create for the teenager. So the predator will often convince the teenager that nobody else understands them the way that they do, and that their mother and father, their guardians, really don't get it, and so sort of create a wall between the guardians, those who could help them, and themselves. And so once the teenager is isolated, then they're going to turn to the predator. And it's a very, the mechanisms and the approaches are very sophisticated, very, very sophisticated.
Yeah, I'm glad you underscored that, Sonia, because I want people to realize predators do not prey on children by chance. They utilize all the resources available to them, including algorithms, to find the age group and what they like.
Exactly.
For parents who are watching, though, and they discover, and for teenagers as well, that they are being preyed upon, how do we help them to overcome that realization? Because it can be traumatic for them.
No, that's when their mental health can be undermined. Because grooming and this targeting is about trust. Once the teenager discovers that they have been exploited, it's almost as if it completely undermines their trust in the world, their trust in other people, and mostly their trust in themselves. So that brings on a huge sense of shame, embarrassment, guilt, and sometimes those feelings, loss of self-esteem, those feelings can be so overwhelming that sort of plunges them into anxiety, depression, even post-traumatic stress disorder, because it's just such an emotional roller coaster once you discovered somebody that you place so much trust in has betrayed you. And that's when you probably need a professional to help this teenager, because of how intense depression and anxiety and trauma can be.
Wow.
Yeah. You've already answered this question, even though I didn't ask it yet, because I'm asking the opposite to what I asked just now. What about the teenager who is quite aware, but still having a good time? I mean, Neville Bell sent a little message and me and her talk, and she don't mind that. When should she say, Mommy, Neville Bell said this and I don't understand why he said that. So I kind of ask you the other way.
Yeah.
So the person who don't want to be caught in this, but just having a good time as a young person, when should she call Mommy and Daddy and say, this big man has said some things to me and I'm not certain?
That's a great question, Neville. I think there's an approach called desensitization, and by desensitization, it's almost like there's slowly dropping little hints, as it were, So it might be something that they might send a photo, for example, that seems very innocent, but as the material in the photo is slowly changing. So the whole process of indoctrination is a very gradual and slow process and can be hard to pick up sometimes, But once it gets to where you're getting a sense that this person is alienating you from the rest of the world, bad-mouthing and undermining other relationships in your life, that's probably a red flag, you know what I mean? Once it starts to get explicit and there are requests for photographs, for live video chats, etc., with somebody you don't know, once it's kind of going over into sexual explicit things, and maybe sometimes you just need to have the teenager check in with you from time to time. What's the nature of the conversations? Can we just talk about that sort of a thing? It might be a better way to approach making sure your teenager is safe.
Yeah, we're out of time, Sonia, but we have to have you back because one of the things I want to talk about is the way parents themselves expose their teenagers to exploitation online. I mean, there is a documentary that's on Netflix now, I believe, about a parent who encourages the teenagers to do certain things so that people can watch and monetize. And I see a lot of things happening in Jamaica in terms of monetization where we're exposing our children. So we can talk a little bit about that. Always good to see you.
Thank you.
Brilliant to see you.
Thank you. So
God bless you.
CEO of Tea House Therapy and clinical psychologist Sonia Winter. Coming up next, the Honorable Christopher Tufton, Minister of Health and Wellness, is going to join us after the break with some great news for you guys.
So come.